Hey everyone, this is your host Caleb Masters here, and I just wanted to put a quick disclaimer in front of this episode. So I am actually recording this rapid fire and blood reaction mobily on the go, and I'm using a different mic than normal. And unfortunately, it turns out the discussion today was a little too hot on the mic, so it is a little blown out. I have done a little bit of light post-production on it to try to reduce that for your listening experience, but I did just want to report the audio is definitely not up to our normal standard of quality, and wanted to put that disclaimer up here today. That said, I hope you enjoy the conversation between me and Lauren, and our next full in-depth episode, which will be coming later this week, will have our audio quality a little closer to what you're used to hearing. Thanks so much, and enjoy the show. Hello, my lords and ladies, to the cast beyond the wall. We're your guide to all things Westerosi, and we're here to bring you a review, an analysis, and a fan v fan debate on each episode of HBO's Game of Thrones successor series, House of the Dragon. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we're back with another special mini-sode of our series, Rapid Fire and Blood Reactions, where my special co-host, Lauren Weingart, and I provide our immediate reactions to the latest episode of House of the Dragon. So we're going to quickly provide our thoughts on the latest episode, that is Season 1, Episode 4, The King of the Narrow Sea, before predicting what we expect to see next, and we're going to conclude by picking a winner, loser, and wild card player from this week's episode. My sun and moon, turning to us, Lauren of House Weingart. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good sir.
It's so good to see you, Lauren. Now, listeners tuning in here, I have a couple things I just wanted to note. First up, you may notice that the audio quality is a little different than what you're used to hearing, and that is because due to life things, I'm traveling and you're hearing me on a slightly different microphone than normal. Hopefully it sounds okay, and if all goes as super well, you won't even notice the difference. But instead of sitting across from the table from me, Lauren and I are recording separated by fate in our conversation here today. Another quick thing I wanted to note is that we did take last week off just due to the Labor Day weekend and a lot of conflicts with the recording schedule. So unfortunately, we had to miss out on our second Rapid Fire and Blood reaction, but we are back here today. However, as I noted, I am currently on the road, meaning that this week's full episode with our co-host, Daniel Stoll, is going to be late. So expect that a little later in the week than you normally would. We're recording a day later, and I'm in between flights, so I appreciate your patience if our full in-depth conversation covering King of the Narrow Sea is 1 to 2 days late this week. Lauren, I'm so glad to be talking with you about Season 1, Episode 4, King of the Narrow Sea.
I am so excited too. Even if you are 2D right now, it's so good to see you.
I'm 2D.
Well, because I've seen you on the screen.
Oh, two-dimensional. Am I even real? Am I even here?
Yeah. Is this even happening right now?
I could be some sort of prophecy from the Westerosi universe. It's a dream.
Oh, hey, Caleb, I have something for you.
Oh, okay. What? Tell me. What do you have for me? I love gifts.
It's tea to rid you of any unwanted consequences.
Oh.
From the king. Oh man, I think we all know what he meant by that.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just get right into it here. What did you think of King of the Narrow Sea, Lauren?
Oh wow, this episode, man. So this episode was all about Rhaenyra, like kind of becoming a woman, kind of learning about sex, and just so happens, though, I guess in that Targaryen way, I guess what has it been? So Daemon comes back, and it's been, what is it, like 4 years?
Oh, since she last saw Daemon? I think that this episode picks up pretty close to the end of last week's episode, but yes, I want to say it was 3 years between episodes 2 and episode 3, and I imagine episode 4 is pretty close to that.
Yeah, so since she's seen him, because, he was banished, so they haven't seen each other in a long time, and so she learns that he comes back, and she's like, ooh, you know what, I kind of like my uncle.
Are you surprised by this? I have to ask. This is an honest question.
I guess I'm not. I mean, we knew from the beginning, like even in the first episode, that there was just kind of like this unsaid chemistry between them. I mean, he got her that necklace, so I I guess I'm not surprised. But man, they just went right into it though. But even though you know, uh, so it was like okay, so he was taking her to the brothel and it seemed like he was into it, but then all of a sudden he wasn't.
I'm really confused by this course of action, because when he does stuff like this, it makes me think that he's not into her. He was just trying to lure her out to be vulnerable so that gossip could spread, so that her reputation would be tarnished. It's a little ambiguous though, because like it also tarnishes his reputation, but he doesn't seem that worried about it.
Yeah, see, I was trying to figure out because I was like, well, I think he does, like her, and all this stuff. But you remember that first episode when he was like, doing, I guess his girlfriend or his wife, and then like he couldn't finish.
Definitely wasn't his wife. I don't think we've seen his wife yet. So
Okay, so we haven't seen.
I think it may have been his partner that he met from the brothel.
Okay. So and then like so he couldn't like really finish, and it's almost like it's this theme of him not being able to like kind of do it, and I just wonder if there's something there. I think something about him not being in charge or in control, because as you notice, I think he might have thought that she was going to be shocked, a little bit by him coming onto her. And I think he kind of expected a different result. And then, but no, she got kind of excited. Like she was into it. And I think maybe he didn't really expect that. And then he was like, you know what? And because, she was trying to kiss him and he was like kind of backing off, and then he hit the wall and left. Mm-hmm. So it's like, what's going on there? Like, so, I think it was because Rhaenyra actually acted kind of a little bit different than she acted or expected. And then he walked off, and then she's like, you know what? Well, if I'm not getting any from you, well, then I'm going to go to give me some from Kristen Cole. And I'm like, hell yeah, that's a step up. In my mind.
Listen. So Kristen Cole is not supposed to have sex.
I know.
He is supposed to be sworn to celibacy. So I get why she's doing all this stuff. I don't necessarily blame her, but she's definitely getting herself in some pretty sticky spots here, because he's going to be sitting on that secret, which he could use against her at any time. Mm-hmm. Or someone else could find out about it and spread it around. Anyway, it makes her more vulnerable, especially when you think about the talk she gets from her father about Viserys, about optics. And what people think versus what is, and why it doesn't really matter. He
didn't even care. He's like, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, And so, and her whole thing was like, well, no, I didn't sleep with him. It's like, yeah.
She still was dishonest though, because she lied to Alicent like straight up. She's like, no. I mean, we went out and it was fun. He took me out on the town, and we went to a brothel, but we were
watching a play. Innocent.
Yeah, well, a play in quotes.
A play of naked people all around me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're honing in on what I think is probably one of the more interesting aspects of it, of the show, and I think it's kind of interesting. One thing I wanted to note here was this episode was in fact directed by a woman. I'm looking her up right now. Let's see. Oh man, so many tabs. So it's directed by Claire Kilner, and also co-written by Ira Parker. So anyway, just it's interesting that they brought women in to sort of cover the episode that I think is most explicit about how sex informs power. We saw tons of sex position in Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is known for it, but I think the way they present it here is much more intimate and political. Right? Oh, you had sex with your uncle. Well, what does that mean? And then she lies about it, and then you see how it spirals out. And then she lies about it to the queen. But then Daemon tells the king that he did have sex with her, basically. It just like is this weird sort of web that's being weaved throughout all the main characters because they can't be honest about it for obvious reasons, but they're not on the same page on what the story is. I just think Rhaenyra is really putting herself in a pretty vulnerable position. I'm not going to lie. Between lying to the queen, having sex with Sir Criston Cole, and not aligning on the lie with Daemon, it just seems like she's putting herself in a pretty tight spot. And I think Viserys knows that. Viserys basically was like, I don't care what you did at this point. Just whatever. The point is, people think you did. And what people think matters a lot more if you're going to rule. Something that is a common theme throughout the episode. Daemon also tells her that. But one other thing I thought was pretty cool was just seeing the difference between the wealthy monarchy in Game of Thrones versus the common people. Rhaenyra, it's almost like Rhaenyra had never left the palace or something. She's walking around taking food, and they're like, "No, you got to pay for that." It's just kind of funny.
I know. It kind of.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like Aladdin. When Jasmine goes out and she's like, "Hey, you street," and they're like, "Hey, you street rat." Like the guard like catches her and everything. She's trying to steal food.
Right. That's actually a pretty apt comparison. There is a little bit of I can show you the world in here, and it's a little icky.
Yeah, exactly. I can show you the world, baby.
Signs your uncle. But I thought it was kind of cool because it highlighted, again, something that Game of Thrones alluded to and sometimes touched on, but I don't think everyone went super deep on it, was, at the end of the day, all these big wars and all the politicking, yeah, sure, you have like your royals who are putting themselves in danger, whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's the average citizens who have to suffer like based on these really terrible decisions, these politically motivated decisions or these selfishly motivated decisions of the main characters. So again, they didn't really go too deep in on that. I just thought it was nice to kind of compare the two, where she's so used to having everything handed to her, having suitors served up to her on a silver platter from all over.
Yeah.
It was just a really interesting way to kind of compare the two ways of life within Westeros. Whereas we're again mostly focused on the royal families, the wealthiest families of Westeros, when in fact there are tons of people that are just like trying to live their lives in the city.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of neat to see a different side. Like it's not, exactly like you said, like it's not all about like this royalty. Like there's obviously another side to all this. So it was good to kind of be consumed into that for a little bit. But yeah, to go back to your point of like the kind of the characters using sex as kind of like a political tool, because this is exactly what's going on. I also like kind of noticed the contrast because the king in the late hours calls upon Alicent, and she's like, "It's so late," and for her, she's laying there looking off in the distance. She's obviously not enjoying herself, and he had all those like gross things on his back too, and so she
looks so miserable.
Yeah, she is so miserable, and she's just, and I like how he like kind of grabs her face and looks at her, and she's like, and she kind of smiles like, "Oh yeah, totally, I'm totally having a good time. Keep going." And then she like dazes back off into the distance, and so she clearly isn't enjoying it. Sex right now for her is a duty, The contrast to as where Rhaenyra, she's experiencing sex as a pleasure, so. You're kind of seeing that contrast there.
Right. And I mean, again, I think that's the difference between Alicent and Rhaenyra is Alicent really believes that duty is her first priority, where Rhaenyra understands what the duties are, and she's not really super interested in pursuing those. She wants to fulfill her own path, her own dreams. She wants to be the queen. But I also don't think she really fully knows what she wants either, hence all the suitors who were served up to her. I did think that was a really fun way to open the episode. We had the Dondarrions sending some super old guy to kind of try and woo her, and then the Blackwoods sent a little kid.
Yeah,
and she's just like has like, oh, this is so dumb.
It's kind of like the medieval version of Tinder. Like you got them all lined up, and it's like, right. It's like next.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Tender for Westeros.
Yes.
If you're the queen, and that's the other thing I just want to going back to sort of the difference in socioeconomic class here. Rhaenyra has a great privilege and opportunity to choose the lame husband she marries. Okay, I think Allison points this out. She's like, most women, if they're lucky, get to choose between two suitors. You have like infinite suitors to choose from. So like, just pick one
Mm-hmm.
and do your duty. You've got to move on. I did, however, really like the conversation that Rhaenyra had with Daemon on that same note, where everyone's like, "It's your duty. It's political. Here's what." And she's like, "Listen, my mom died because she was determined to have to give birth to an heir, and I'm not about that." So again, I thought that was cool, but at the end of the day, I just keep going back to, wow, what a privileged. Yes, the situation and system she is in is terrible. It is oppressive to women, but also she's got like men everywhere trying to woo her, and she, while most women in this world are just no choice. They're there to make babies.
Mm.
It just is kind of a difference in like priorities, I guess I would say, and perspective. At the end of the day, though, this is Westeros, and it's terrible to women. So it's even her situation is awful. I'm just saying her situation compared to other women in that same world, not so bad.
Not so bad.
But again, I appreciate that she's questioning the system. But there's a lot of times I was like, man, this show is so much about rich people problems. I can't deal with it.
I know. I think with her, she just doesn't want to get married, you know. Um, and part of her, I guess, trying to find someone that, because he's like giving her the go ahead, like, okay, marry who you want. She's like, well, kind of like, well, what does that look like, And so this is just her becoming a woman and trying to figure that out. But it didn't work out, because in the end, the king was like, nope, you're marrying Velaryon, and that's the end of it.
That's right. Yeah, she's gonna marry the sea snake's son. So I think, which is what was suggested by one of his advisors in the last episode, and politically, it makes the most sense. Honestly,
Makes sense.
The sea snake's kid is, he's a dragon rider. He's the one who swooped in to save the day at the end of the last episode, episode 3. So I mean, it's not that he's unaccomplished or disinteresting. So she could have worse choices. She could have been married to the Blackwood kid, So, I think though. I mean, Lauren, I would say at the end of the day, this was a solid episode. Very quiet, intimate. Not just intimate because of the sex, but just lots and lots of just character related conversations about power, about wealth, about sex, about choices. And I don't know, coming off of last week, we had a big battle. It definitely felt like a bit of a slower burn. I like it overall. It just feels like more table setting. So, very solid episode of House of the Dragon. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I am really eager to see where they take it next. What did you think of it overall at the end of the day?
I enjoyed it. I was intrigued the whole time because I was like, oh my gosh, where is this going? Oh, it went there. Kind of giving me that that it definitely felt like Game of Thrones, and maybe not just because of the sex, but yeah, a lot because of the sex. Especially, we kind of got that infamous incest going on. But they obviously didn't end up going all the way, but they're kind of playing around with that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, it does feel like old school Game of Thrones, and in mostly good ways, I would say. All right, well, there's so much more we could talk about with this episode, but I think at the end of the day, this was more of rapid fire and blood reactions is here for very quick reactions from Laura and I. You kind of just got some almost stream of consciousness thoughts on what we thought of the episode. But Lauren, I do want to put a pin in it by talking about the winners and losers of the week. So I want to turn to you here. Who wins? Who lost? Who won? Who lost? And who would you name as the wild card for the week?
Okay, well, I'm going to start with the loser. I think Otto Hightower is a loser.
got knocked right off his high tower.
Yeah. Yeah. Take that. Yeah, I couldn't believe that. He took that right from him. I mean, even though he did give him pretty accurate information, I guess he decided from what Rhaenyra said that he also should take it from him. So I did notice one thing. Okay, so there was like that messenger boy or whatever.
Okay, yeah. I'd written something about this down, but I wasn't sure. I was gonna wait until I saw the episode again to confirm it to make sure I had it right. But that and this is where I get into the theory where I'm like, is Daemon just doing this as a way to knock Rhaenyra's reputation down a peg?
I know they kind of didn't even say anything because okay, so there's the messenger, which also kind of reminded me who had like the little kids running around. Was it Littlefinger or was it Varys?
Varys, yeah.
Varys, yeah. Okay, so it reminded me like, oh, so that kind of makes me think Otto Hightower kind of might be Varys type, kind of having all this information and everything.
Yeah, but the messenger got paid off by Daemon.
Yes, yeah. I noticed that because you notice the kid coming in and she like pays him, but then they like don't even really like say much about it. But yeah,
it definitely seems like this whole thing was a ploy. The theory is that I mean, it seems to be where they're leaning. It's not really a theory. It was implied by that is that Daemon set this whole thing up. Like he took Rhaenyra out as a very calculated decision to get her out, get her vulnerable. Had the messenger kid make sure he was watching the brothel in which she came out of, and then Daemon's mistress paid him to ensure that Otto received that information. So basically, this kid's a double agent. He was working for Daemon and for Otto.
For sure, yeah, totally. And it's like the king said. He's like, you're not a. You don't long for my daughter. You long for my throne. So yeah, I don't. Even though I think he has, affection for her, I think it was just him trying to, play the game.
Daemon, you're referring to
Daemon. Yeah. So I would say Otto Hightower's the loser because he got taken from the hand of king. I guess the winner, I'll just say Rhaenyra. I mean, she got her some.
That's a win. That is one way to look at it, yeah.
That's a win, even though she's in a very vulnerable situation right now, and she kind of put herself in a tight corner. But wild card, that one was tough for me. Because I also kind of think Daemon was kind of lost a little bit. He got banished again. Yeah. I guess I'll say Viserys because he's making some big moves. He's like, nope, you're marrying him, and I'm taking you from this position.
Oh, wait, that's Viserys, the king.
Viserys, sorry, yeah, Viserys. Maybe he's kind of the wild card. There wasn't, too many players in this episode, I noticed, but yeah. Or maybe, maybe I'll give it to Massaria. Is that how you say it?
Massaria
his mistress,
Daemon's mistress. I mean, she's definitely a wild card. I don't know what her angle is, so I think she's perpetually a wild card.
Yeah, for sure. So there's mine.
All right, so I am very on the same page as you. I also put this week's loser as Otto Hightower. To your point, and we didn't really get to talk about this too much, but to your point, it did while Viserys nailed it about Otto's motives, it did seem like a weirdly circumstantial time for him to just throw him out. I didn't actually think Otto did anything too politically motivated in this episode. He got some information from one of his spies, and he delivered the information to the king. Information that was 95% accurate. The 5% being that they didn't consummate the sex.
Well, it's kind of funny when you put it that way because he's done all these other things that he probably could have been thrown from this position that was for political gain. But this one, I think, actually was him actually trying to be, somewhat I guess, compassionate for the king. Like, hey, like, this is information he needs to know. And I don't want to tell him. He's not going to want to hear this. It's kind of shoot the messenger kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say, these things can both be true, right? He can delivering the king a message that also happens to benefit him. I think these things are both true. I don't think
Does it benefit him?
Well, it does. If the king had taken him for his word, it would have made Rhaenyra look bad.
Yeah, that's
in the
true.
king's eye. And that's why I say it is kind of weird, because you and I and everyone on every episode, we've been saying, man, Otto Hightower very quietly positioning himself very strategically by not saying a lot. And this one time where I didn't really think what he did was that weird or obviously politically motivated, just kind of like, it's like forwarding an email. He's like, yeah, I just got this email. You probably should look at this. I don't really want to send it, but you probably need to know. And the king's like, I'm going to call you out for all your sins over this one forwarded email.
Yeah.
Actually, this just is your job, but I'm calling you out. So it was a little strange that this was the thing that put him over. But anyway, I say it to say, Otto Hightower, definitely the loser. The winner did not even appear in this week's episode, and that is Corlys Velaryon. Why? Because they're going to bring him back into the fold. Velaryons are back. They're going to marry. Rhaenyra. Corlys' son's going to marry Rhaenyra, and it's going to position him very well in the future. I imagine he'll be back on the small council in no time. And this week's wild card. I actually went for this week's wild card as Alicent. And listen, Alicent's not having a good time. As you pointed out, Lauren, she's having to really put up with some very bad sex from a very not looking great dude. That said, she actually, I think, still has Viserys' ear. I think he still listens to her whenever she does provide advice. And she does have some skin in the game with Aegon, her son, being a potential heir. And I think the question, the wild card aspect is, when is she going to play that card? If she's going to play that card. I will say, I would have said I didn't think she was going to play that card, but then Rhaenyra just straight up point blank lied to her this week, and she's going to find out. So I just don't think the future bodes well for Rhaenyra. But for Alicent, it could be a big win. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have time for today. That is this week's Rapid Fire and Blood reaction with special guest host Lauren Weingart. Now, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, it's a pleasure talking House of the Dragon with you.
Of course.
And listeners, we need your help. In order to get discovered by more listeners like you, please make sure to rate and review the podcast on your preferred podcast app, including Apple or Spotify. You can also support us by following the Cast Beyond the Wall on Twitter at cast_beyond_GOT, or following us on Facebook at facebook.com/cast beyond the wall. And also, you could just tell your friends about us. If you're really enjoying all this House of the Dragon week by week episodes, tell your friends about us, tell them about the show. It would really help us get one step further in the very competitive landscape for Game of Thrones podcast. Lauren, where can people keep up with you and all the cool things you're doing online?
You can follow me at Video Peach Productions on Instagram and Facebook, doing some wedding videography.
All right, and of course, you can find me on Twitter tweeting about things at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. Mostly films, sometimes video games, oftentimes TV. Check us out there. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning into our second Rapid Fire and Blood reactions conversation. Again, I want to remind you, the deep dive episode this week is going to be a little bit late. I would expect it on Thursday, and as late as Friday. Hopefully the gods will be kind and it won't take that long. But again, it will be later than our normal Wednesday drop date. Can't wait to join you again next time when we go Beyond the Wall.